Brothers and sisters in the Dhamma, a very good afternoon to everyone. Today, we have a Dhamma talk organized by the Ti-Ratana Youth Buddhist. Today we have a Dhamma talk organized by the Ti-Ratana Youth Buddhist section. It will be given by Datuk Chia. Please welcome Datuk Chia.
Okay, a very good afternoon, brothers and sisters, and Suki Hotu. May you be well and happy. Well, this is my second time here, and it's a good opportunity to share some of the Dhamma, as well as also what the Buddha has taught. And today, I think it's a very special occasion, and many of you are aware that on the 5th of this month, we are actually celebrating the Qing Ming festival. And in conjunction with this, and apart from the lighting of lamps and dedication of the merits to the departed relatives, it's also apt that we share some Buddhist teachings, as well as what the Buddha mentioned about the honoring of the departed. So, Qing Ming has always been a festival, or rather an occasion, once a year. Which point there? Which one? What day? Bottom. Okay. Well, Qing Ming has always been on this occasion of the 5th of April. And I think it's almost every year the same date. Reason is because the calculation for Qing Ming is actually 105 days from the 22nd of December. And 22nd of December is actually the winter solstice. That's the Dongjie, right? And the winter solstice is always celebrated on the 22nd. And it is a calculation that 105 days from that date is the date when we will go to do the tomb sweeping and observe this festival called Qing Ming. Qing means clear and bright. Qing Ming, so bright and clear. So on this particular day is you clean up the cemetery, as well as also the various columbarium. Because nowadays you don't go to cemetery anymore. You also have cremation, and after cremation, the relics are being kept into your urns, and then they are actually enshrined in columbarium. So you also visit the columbarium during this day itself. But there are many who couldn't reach these places in particular. Then they can actually do it at home, and you celebrate or you observe this particular day itself in the house. So that is when you do some honoring. Now this is a very good occasion where we gather all our relatives and next of kin to come to the tombs or to the cemetery, and it is a good chance for a reunion, especially when all your parents have passed on and you do not really have a focal point for the family members together. So normal times when you visit your parents, you go to one particular house, which is the ancestral house, and then everyone then gathers in that house, because the focal point is the parents or one of the parents. But in this case, if both of them have passed away, then you probably want to hold it inside the cemetery itself. Because eventually, tradition-wise, we always say that after the parents have passed away, then the elder ones will then be the focal point. But sometimes families do feel a little bit reserved to go to the, what do you call, the elder one for reunion, so they would rather have their own reunions. So the best time is if we can gather everyone together to visit the tomb, and there on the tomb itself, you network, you discuss, you talk, you actually build up your relationship. So it's a good opportunity, and this is a good chance actually created by need actually, that if everyone can gather at the cemetery, then that will be the best occasion. And you find that sometimes the whole family gathers very now. A lot of, even Dean and Mary, some even let go firecrackers and have their, something like a picnic. And you do get occasions like this celebrated, not only in the Chinese communities, you also have this in the various nationalities and communities. I remember if you go to Philippines, the Philippine cemetery are almost like bungalow houses. And you actually meet in the bungalow house, and that is where you have your mahjong. And the cemetery or the tomb is actually inside the house. And you actually aircon the house. And there you have your celebrations together. So it's a good chance or good venue in order to gather everyone together. Now you'll notice that we have this occasion where we fix it on the 5th, but you can do it 10 days before and 10 days after. So this does not mean that on the exact day, because otherwise you get a congestion in the cemetery area. So it's good that nowadays a lot of children and relatives will then say, okay, let's fix a day, but not on the actual day. So it's somehow or other, it's also good for those who go on the actual day, because everybody has already gone on other days. And so the actual day becomes less congested. And you get everyone there, and it's actually very now. Very now means very, a lot of people, a lot of traffic. Now imagine you go to the cemetery alone, or only a small group of people. You get kind of a psychological fear. But if everybody is there, and it's almost like a merry place, then if you feel more comfortable. So to create this occasion, then it is a tradition that was created by need, that okay, on this particular day everybody meets. But now you have actually also given the leeway where you go 10 days before and 10 days after, of course usually during the weekends. But again, many of us say better don't go on weekends, because that's the time when the crowd is there. Then you go on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then the crowd becomes less. So you practically go very early in the morning before the sun comes up, and subsequently, after you have finished, it's probably only about 8 o'clock or 8:30, then you can go for your breakfast together. Now, on an occasion like this, when you go to the tomb, you like to make offerings, right? And a lot of us would bring pao, oranges, and cooked dishes, and fruits. And then you'll find that, these are actually more to honor the departed. But the question is it really necessary? This is the topic of today's talk, whether all these offerings are necessary. Now, not only the food, now you also got a lot of gadgets to burn away. And this year is very, very spectacular. Apparently, they also provide masks and vaccination. And you'll find that they will burn this just in case down there or up there, they may need this, in order to control the COVID. Now, the person already passed away, so do you really need to have vaccination and COVID protection? But anyway, this is the thought, right? The thought. And again, you do have occasion like when you burn money. I think if you go into YouTube, there is a viral clip on Chief Reverend talking about that the Chinese are very innovative people. They even create banks in hell. So you have hell bank, and then the hell bank also issue notes, currency. And you have currency like this, you actually burn for them in order so that they are rich enough to go and buy things and spend. So you do have commerce and business and maybe shopping mall in the netherworld. But this is on the common belief that if we need it here, therefore we must need it there. So a lot of times you not only burn this, you also burn clothes and of course bags, purses, and some also branded one, you got Louis Vuitton some more, and Gucci, and then eventually you burn for the departed relatives. So the question asked is whether do they really need all these items? If they are being born in that kind of world system, do they need us to send them things, or can they manufacture themselves if there is really a necessity? And do they really need money to buy items when do they really need food? So we will have to go through some of this discussion. But a lot of our Buddhist families, on such an occasion, no doubt do some offering, but at the end of the day, they will perform one very important ceremony, which is called the transference of merit. Gong De. Transfer of merits means Gong, transfer. De means merit. Merits, and did they really receive the merits when you transfer? And how do you transfer? Do you transfer by DHL or post laju, or do you ask somebody to be the messenger or logistics in order to deliver all these meritorious actions, deeds over to them? But at the end of the day, we have to come back to what the Buddha taught us. Is that, yes, true, life is such that this is not the only life. Eventually, when a person passed away, or when a being passed away, it is a natural phenomena, because the moment you are born, there will be always old age, sickness, and death. These are inevitable, which means to say, you will then one day have to become old, one day have sickness, and one day then pass on from this existence as a human being, or as a, what you call, being on earth. Then the question is, where do you go after this? Are you being reborn, or when we talk about this is the only life, and when you live this life, you live it to the fullest, and you do whatever you need, and subsequently at the end of the day, you will either go to everlasting heaven, or you go to everlasting hell? Or do you go through what we call the Lunhui, or the rounds of rebirth, birth after birth, born, die, born, die, born, die. So it's a continuity of existence. And then how does really rebirth takes place, right? How does, what form shall we take depending on what we do with this current life, and what is the mechanism? Because we always say that whatever you do in this life will then create the karmas, and then it's your karma which then will determine your next birth. And then actually, what was the one that was born? Is it a soul, or is it a mind, a mental energy that is actually being transferred from one life to the next life? And if you are in this life in the body of a human being, the next life, this mind may take form, or this soul may take form in the body of an animal, or in a beta, a ghost, or as a deva, or as the higher Brahma beings. And then how does it actually take place? What kind of mechanism actually goes through? Because until and unless we understand this, then we will have to find out what do they really need if they are reborn in the next existence, whether as a peta, a ghost, a spirit, or whether as a deva, if they are born in the deva worlds, or whether they are born as an animal in the next kingdom, in the next life. Are they going to need all the things that we do in offering? And is offering really necessary? So before we go into any further discussion, let us just say about what is actually death. Right? Now, when a person is born, he will then slowly grow from a baby, eventually to a teenager, and a teenager then to an adult to an elderly, and an elderly after that, either the deterioration of the organs, either the failure of the organs, either what we call the being stricken by a sickness or an external factors, which then causes the cessation of a person's life. And that cessation is called death. But what happens is that when a person is born, he's born with two aggregates or two forms of aggregates or two forms of energy. One is called a physical energy, which is the rupa. Another one is called the mental energy, which is called the nama. So it's called nama and rupa, right? And nama means the mind, rupa means the body, mind and body, or mental energies and physical energy. That's why in the description of human being or description of animals, description of all these beings, within the 31 cycles of existence, we say they are called psychophysical. Psycho means the mind, physical means the body. So it's two forms of energy coming together and react, and thus create what we call a psychophysical being. There will come a point in time when this form or rupa or body, which is subject to old age, sickness and death, which is subject to impermanence, will change from one form to another, and one day it will then deteriorate until it cannot support anymore. In other words, the organs would have failed. The body would have deteriorated to old age and no longer can sustain. Or it will be impacted by an accident or by a sickness and eventually has to collapse and eventually has to cease. But when it ceases, the body is the one that actually is being left, what you call lifeless. But is there any cessation to the mind? Or in other words, we call it commonly, some people use the word soul, 灵魂, soul. But in the Buddha's teaching, we do not talk about soul. Soul means you maintain the same entity. You maintain the same likes and dislikes. You maintain the same memory. In other words, you become like what you call a soul, floats out, but it is still the same entity as what was before. But in the Buddha's teaching, we say that it is the mental energy that is actually being released. And that release will then attract itself to another form and then eventually combine back again with another form to create another psycho-physical being. But that form can be in any form within the 31 planes of existence, which is called the Rupa Loka and the Arupa Loka. Rupa Loka means existence with forms. That means they have a form. They can be in the form of a human being, they can be in the form of an animal, they can be in the form of a ghost, they can be in the form of a deva. These are called Rupa Loka. Loka means world of forms. Rupa Loka. But there are another 5 more, which is the highest, where you exist without any rupa. So you call it Arupa Loka. So later on we are going to look at the chart, which is actually the highest forms of existence, where you exist only in the mind. Your mind is so, what you call peaceful, so what you call in a blissful mode, that you exist there without any attachment to form. Because now you cling on to your form. when you reach that stage, you don't cling on to the form. So you become arupa loka. But as long as you are in arupa loka or rupa loka, you are still within this samsara, or we call it the 31 plane of existence. That means you can be either in one of these, but at the end of the day, you are still caught. And once you are caught here, you will always one fine day have to die, because rupa lokas will die. Arupa lokas also, once the energy loses its intensity, loses its energy level, it will then, after that, pass on. So, death is happening within these 31 planes of existence. But as long as you have death, then you have birth. Then we say, 有生就有老，有生就有病，有生就有死. Because of birth, that's why you have to face old age, sickness, and death. So therefore, if you are caught within samsara, there will always be birth and death. Death is the beginning of birth. Birth is the beginning of death. And you go through the rounds of samsara, like a round robin, pushing and pushing and pushing, until you want to put a stop to that. So we all learn in our Four Noble Truths that the reason why we are born is because of a craving force, tanha. Craving for existence, craving for non-existence, and craving for sensual pleasure. As long as we have this craving inside our mental energy, always grasping, always attaching, always craving to exist, want to live everlastingly, always craving not to exist, you want to end it once and for all. Always craving to please your sense door, that means you want to please your sense to see beautiful things, to hear beautiful words, to eat what you call sweet food, and to smell fragrance, and to touch very pleasant feelings. As long as you want to enjoy your sense doors, then you are caught in that craving. Once you still have that craving, there is like a magnetic force which will then attaches itself. When it's released from this form, it will then attach itself to another form and never cease from birth. So therefore, there is no cessation of birth, there is no cessation of dukkha. Noble truth means you have dukkha, and dukkha is because you are born, and you are born because of craving. What if you cease from craving and you eradicate craving? Then when there's no more craving in that mental state, in that mind or mental energy, then that mental energy do not attach itself, do not have a craving force to go and attach to another form. And if there is no more attachment to another form, then there is no more birth. 没有生就没有老，没有生就没有病，没有生就没有死. And remember, the Buddha set off in order to find the truth, the Dhamma. It's because he saw these four things, isn't it? Old age, sickness, and death. And he was actually thinking very seriously, can we end old age, sickness, and death once and for all? Because it's very miserable states of mind. And the answer later on, he found that only when you end birth, and only when you end craving, then only you can end old age, sickness, and death. Otherwise, you are still caught over and over and over again. And that's why he gave us the fourth noble truth, which is called the path leading to the cessation of craving. That means you follow this noble eightfold path, you slowly reduce your craving until you have ceased from craving. When you pass away with that mind, it's called an enlightened mind. You feel so light that you don't attach to anything. And when you don't attach to existence, craving for existence, when you don't crave for non-existence, when you don't crave to please sense doors, then that mind is liberated and free. And with that liberate mind, when the separation takes place upon that last birth, then that mental energy no longer have any more attachment and no more birth. That is the cessation of birth. That is the Four Noble Truth. So therefore, by understanding this, then we know that death is actually a separation of the mind and body. Now what happened to the body? The body you leave behind. You either buried it, treat it with respect, send it off with the funeral rites, have some blessings for it, dress it nicely, put it in a proper, what you call, coffin, and you can then send it for cremation, you can send it for burial, you can send it for even aerial burial. That means you send it to the mountains, or you can actually go for the sea burial. But you respect the body, but you have left it. But what happened to the mind? Then the mind is the one that we want to know where it has been born. So if our departed relatives, upon their passing away, where will they be born? We do not know. Because we don't have the ability to determine or to see where they have been born. So we have to be more, what you call, by chance. We try our chance. And we say, okay, on the first 7th day, after the 7th day, that is the time when there is a possibility of a rebirth if they are born as a Peta. Because Peta have different lifespan if they are born as Peta. If they are born as Peta, then within 7 days, they will then be due for a rebirth. When they are due for a rebirth, we perform a transference of merits. We perform a ceremony. We perform a chanting to transfer these merits to them, so that if they can absorb these merits and take birth, then they will be elevated to a higher rebirth. The second 7 is the next round. If they don't get reborn on the first 7th, then they will be reborn on the second 7th, or the third 7th, or the fourth 7th, until the 7th 7th. And that's why you find that in our traditional practice, we observe the 7 7ths. Of course, now we shortcut. Only we observe the odd 7, the first 7, the third 7, and what you call the fifth 7, and then the final 7 7. And some, they just observe the first 7, and then they observe the 7 7, and then they observe the 100 days. Because the 100 days is another mark, another benchmark to determine whether they will then take rebirth. So our idea is to actually honor them during this time and then transfer merits to them. Now, when you transfer merits, actually what happens? If they are born as a Peta, right? Now, as a Peta, or as a Deva, or as what you call higher Brahma beings, they are still in the Arupa Loka. They still have forms. In other words, they still have a physical energy. Physical energy is like our body is made up of what you call molecules. And the molecule is made up of atoms. And the atoms is made up of protons, electrons, and neutrons. And what are these? These are actually little, what you call, globules or modules of energy. And these are brought together and attract together. And thus, because of the electromagnetic attraction, molecules come together and attract to each other. So they orbit around each other. And the more the attraction, the more dense they become. Our molecules that is inside our body is like the planet. If you look at the solar system, you will know. In the center is the sun. And that is called proton. And you then have all the 9 planets that is going around. That is called electrons. So you have protons and electrons orbiting around each other. And each of these atoms that is in our body is actually like that. And that's why we have the atomic charts of our chemicals. Like iron, what is the atomic chart? Silver, what is the atomic chart? Magnesium, what is the atomic chart? Potassium. So our body is comprised of all these chemicals. Potassium, calcium, sodium. And therefore, when you break this up, they are actually what we call little balls of energy. Attract together, and the denser they come, they then create what we call a dense form. And this dense form then create an identity. When I look at you as a mass of this energy. And of course, my mind then recognize by looking at the features, recognize you as Brother Rain or Brother Charlie. So therefore, there is a recognition, there's an identity, and there's a physical form. All right? Now, when you talk about these beings which are born after death, and they happen to be born as a Peta, What energy does a peta have in terms of physical form? Can you see a peta? You can't, isn't it? You can see me because when light falls on me, reflects to your eye. Your eye see me, and then your mind then comes up to an image and says, I can see an image, and I recognize this image through experience, called Brother Charlie Chia. Peta, they also have forms, but their forms are very subtle. Their forms are like wind particles. Like, for example, the dust in this room. Can you see the dust in this room? You cannot. But let's say it's at night, and I close off all the lights, and it's totally dark. And then I shine a torchlight, and there's a beam of torchlight running out. And then you see through this beam of torchlight, you see the dust particles dancing around. In other words, now the light reflects on these particles that is floating around to my eye, and now my eye can see, and my eye can see some forms. That's why when you talk about ghosts or you talk about spirit, you can see, but only for a split second, or only for a short while when the light reflects. And when you see this type of being, you say, I saw a flash. And usually flash what color? White. That's why we say ghosts wear white. And usually, can you see the face? You can't, because it's a flash. So you see ghosts got long hair covered all over the place. And then you say, how do they look like? And then you conjure, all in your image, through your concept and your preconceived ideas. So you sometimes see, sometimes don't. But they exist in the form of a light, what you call energy form. And they float around. They travel all over the place. And they always like to go to places where there is no wind like this. If there's a wind and I'm so light, I'll be floating all over the place. So I would rather go and find a stagnant air, or what we call a cold zone, or we say yin energy. That's the reason why you have a yin energy and a yang energy, yin yang. Yang energy means energies, very active. Yin means very cold, cold energy. Cold energy means stagnant. So if you have a corner where it is yin, then it's a good place to rest if you are in that kind of a form, right? And that's why sometimes when you move into a new house, you would like to, what you call, energize the house. So you open up all your doors and your windows and let the wind and let the sun and let the light. These are energies. The wind is energy, the light is energy, the sound is energy, and this will then energize the place. Now, if that corner is a yin energy, what do? You then place a fountain there, or you then place a lamp there. You then place a Wi-Fi speaker there. So when the sound is there, when the light is there, when the wind is there, then it becomes a yang energy. And these kind of beings will then don't like this kind of energy. They will then have to move on to the next energy. And that's how you moved around. Number 2, when you enter into a new house, which is closed up all the time, chances is that it is a very stagnant energy level. So, beings like this then have found a suitable place to reside. So when you moved in, not only do you open your house, you also what we call bring a stove. And Cantonese we say yap for, isn't it? You place a stove over in the house, and then you start the stove, and the stove burns very bright. And then you say yap for, and you bring the stove from outside the house into the house, and then eventually you place it in the kitchen. What is the meaning of this? Yap for means signifying the entry of human existence. Why? Because only humans cook their food. Ghosts cook their food or not? Animals cook their food or not? Devas cook their food or not? They don't cook their food. It is only human beings that we cook the food. And the stove is a symbol of cooking. and preparation of food. And we prepare our food. They don't prepare their food. So therefore, what do they eat? What do they consume? Now, we all know that when you pray with food and eventually and honor them with food, chances is at the end of the day, the food will lose its flavor. The mei wei, xiang wei will be actually gone. Why? Because they relished in that smell, the energy. And then they, Hokkien we say, 皮掉就飽了, 香到就飽咗啦. Which means to say, they don't consume the food, but they actually enjoy the smell of that food because it's an energy. Smell is an energy because there's molecules flying, and the molecule is then absorbed by the nasal sense sphere, and the sense will then pick it up, pass to the mind and says, 很香啊, very what you call nice smell, and they enjoy the smell. And that's why we sometimes burn sandalwood incense. We don't simply burn incense. The reason why we offer incense is because incense is smell, and smell actually enliven the place. So when we make food offerings to these beings, they have no ability to consume. They have ability to appreciate by some of the energies called smell. But at the end of the day, through their sight, they can also experience the sight, but they cannot consume the food. But then they have this good feeling that you are honoring them. It's like, I go to your house, you honor me food, but I can't eat. But I like the idea that you have honored me food and respect me. And because you respect me, I feel good about it. And the Buddha has many occasions mentioned this, even in the Mangala Sutta. And he advised the Devas and says that human beings have for many generations make offerings of food and fruits and incense. You, by virtue of accepting these offerings, then honor them, then protect them, then keep them in safety. So that's how they reciprocate. So therefore, when a person has passed away and they are born as a human being, then they will need to consume food. But they are already in another place which is beyond your contact. So we now, on this part here, when we do this honoring, we actually honor in food, in items, in a lot of what we call the items that you see, or the paper we burn. But the question is, do they really receive them? As Buddhists, we say no. They will not be able to receive, though they may experience it. They will not be able to actually have them and keep them. So, the best thing for us to do is to transfer merits. Now, what do we mean by transfer of merits? If you are born as a peta, and a peta has a lot of unsatisfactoriness, we call it dukkha. That's why you call it the woeful states of mind. If they are in a corner, as long as what you call other beings don't disturb them, they don't disturb you. But you, by virtue of your physical form, create so much wind, create so much disturbance to the environment that you actually push them all over the place. So in their sense of unhappiness, in their sense of what you call woefulness, why can't I stay in one place? Why can't I be still? Why can't I have what you call peace of mind? They become agitated. And sometimes, to a certain extent, they can respond by creating some, what you call, trouble. And then when they create trouble, that is when we say, oh, it's haunted. I remember there was this story told by the Buddha, the Chief Reverend. Chief Reverend says, one fine day, there was this family came and do some offerings to the temple. And then they went to see the Reverend and says, Chief, can you help us or not? Our house, I think, is haunted. Things are moving around, right? Now remember, they not only cannot use physical, but the mind can actually move things, right? This is called teledynamics. Tele means mind moving objects. So objects are moving around. So we are very disturbed. Can you please help us? So Chief Reverend said, okay, If that is the case, then I will go and do some chanting. So when he goes to the house, he did the chanting of Ratana Sutta, Metta Sutta, and then subsequently, 1 week later, the family came back to see the chief. He said, Chief Reverend, I don't know whether you did a good job or you did a bad job. Now they are more noisy. There are more disturbance. They are creating more hoo-ha and ha. So what shall we do? Then Chief Reverend said, oh, like that. Very good. They are responding. Right? Since they are responding, then we will go and do a chanting again. Now remember, the Buddhist chanting are not by power of this, I expel you. By power of this, I remove you. No. Metta Sutta is telling them to radiate loving kindness, to be kind to others, to have peace of mind, to not to disturb others. These are advices. And as a moralist, you advise. And if they are able to listen, then they will say, yeah, okay. I accept because it comes from a teaching. Then I will then move away. I will then stop disturbing. I will then, stop what I am doing. But since they are responding, which means to say they could be affected. So if they are affected, then go and advise again. And that's what, it goes back, do the chanting again, and then this time, about nearly 2 to 3 weeks later, the family came back. The family says, yeah, very good, Bante. You have done a good job. Now, inside the house quiet, outside the house noisy. So Chief Reverend said, oh, then it's more response, very good. Then eventually, the next time he went, he then blessed, after chanting, blessed the compound and around the house. And after a few months later, the family came back and says, you have done a very good job. Now inside the house, outside the house, very peaceful. But the neighbor house now very noisy. They move on. But the moral of this story, as what he was trying to say, is that this kind of beings, they do listen to some of these, advices or teachings, which teach you what to do good, to avoid evil, to purify the mind. And by being a being with a sentient mind, sometimes you accept this advice. And then you stop what you are doing. You then change over. You then repent what you are doing. And that is exactly what chanting is all about. So on such occasion, we invite the devas, we invite the other beings to help to participate in the chanting that we are doing. And as a result, rejoice in the chanting of the teachings of the Buddha. Feel good, feel happy. Second, is that before we do any transference of merits, do some good deeds. Perform a dana. Offer the robes. Offer food to the monks. Do some charity. Help some, organizations. And then rejoice in that good thought that you have done so. Feel good about it and say, I have been able to do all these good things. And then rejoice in that thought. Now what happened is, you're now going to transfer this good thought to that departed relative. Now, what do you do when you do transference of merits? You then sit quietly, rejoicing in that good thoughts, and then recollect your departed relative. How do you recollect them? Is by visualizing them. Look into your mind and see them appearing in your mind. Your parents who have passed on, your grandparents who have passed on, your relatives, and sometimes even your friends and your teachers and colleagues. And as they appear in front of you, see them smiling at you. See them at peace with you. And the most important workings here is, when you are thinking of them, you are actually creating a frequency synchronization. In other words, when our mind is thinking, our mind is emitting a mind transmission. And that mind transmission has a frequency. So if you are thinking of a happy thought, we call it 106.7 megahertz, which is called light and easy. That means your mind is transmitting 106.7. But if you are angry and what you call moving around, then you are transmitting, say, for example, 95.3, which is actually hot FM stereo, which plays a lot of what you call very dynamic music. Now, the moment we think of our departed relatives, then our mental frequency is then tuned to the same frequency as their frequency. So if they are thinking of the same frequency, tuning to the same frequency, if you are rejoicing in your mind, are they also rejoicing in their minds? Then they are rejoicing. Now, our mind can only do one thing at one time. If you are happy, you are not unhappy. If you are unhappy, you are not happy. If you are happy and unhappy at the same time, then you are xiao liao. So that is the truth about the mind. So if our mind is rejoicing, we then forget our suffering, forget our unhappy thoughts, forget our negative thoughts. When our mind is in the states of happiness and rejoicing, then that was a thought that eventually we are going to pass on and attract itself to the next birth. If it is a happy thought, where will you be reborn if rebirth takes place at that time? It will definitely be a happy realm. If your thoughts are very negative and very angry and very unhappy, then you will then take birth in an unhappy realm. But supposing you are not taking rebirth yet, and you're able to rejoice in that happy moments, all the time you have unhappy moments, and now you have a happy moment, happy thoughts arising in your mind, are you free from your suffering? Therefore, you have gong de, transfer a happy thoughts from this mind to that person's mind. Remember, your mind can be connected. All you have to do is just focus and think of the same frequency, tune your frequency to the same frequency, you will then see the same picture. If everybody is tuned to 95.3, then you also hear the same music. If you are tuned to 106.7, then you are also tuned to the same light and easy. And that is the meaning of transference of merits. Now, when you are born in a realm where it is very unhappy realms, you like to have some of these moments of happy moments and happy thoughts. And the only way they can achieve it is that somebody transfer to them. Give them the opportunity to give back that happy thoughts. And then when they are relishing the happy thoughts, they free themselves from the dukkha or suffering. So do you need any intermediary? Do you need any courier service? Do you need any medium to transfer or logistic to transfer? All you have to do is just think of them, and they will then enjoy the same rejoicing. But you must have your rejoicing first. We say if you don't have modal, no capital, then you cannot give away. So we must always do good things, good merits, good actions, and then rejoice in that good actions and feel good about it, be happy about it, and then think of your departed relatives and honor them by transferring these merits to them. And they depend on you for merits. But what if they are not born in the Peta realm? Because the Peta realm is the easiest to communicate. What if they are born not in the, what you call, in the animal realm? What if they are born as a human being already? Then what happened to the merits that you have transferred? Return to sender. Postal address. Because you send them, so return to you lah. So at the end of the day, who benefits? You benefit. Whether it's being received or not, you yourself will then benefit. And we always say that when a candle burns bright, if it doesn't light another candle, does it burn as bright? So that is the meaning of transference of merits. So when we are in this kind of occasion, first, when we honor them with a lot of food, fruits, burn a lot of incense and paper, then at the end of the day, are we actually enhancing their happiness, or are we enhancing their craving? They're already suffering from their craving, from their attachment, and yet you are still burning all this in order to increase their craving and enhance their craving. Are you resolving their problem? No. So therefore, to a certain extent, as Buddhists, not only do we discourage, we are saying it is not necessary. Why waste so much money on all this burning? Not cheap, huh? When you go to the shop and buy a box of this, what do you call, siong, the kim siong, they call it. It can cost you 100, 200, 300. And then the amount of paper that you burn, not only you pollute the air, right? You disturb the environment. You also have a big hole in your pocket. Why not use this money to go do some charity, donate to some good cause, and then offer dana to the needy, to the monks, to the temple, to the charities, and then feel good about this. And then it serves a much more meaningful purpose itself. So that is how we as Buddhists, we will then observe Qing Ming. Yes, it becomes a good filial piety that will remember our departed relatives. Lately, I went to buy myself one niche in the columbarium in Nirvana. And then I prepare a package, a funeral package for myself and my wife. And of course, together with the brothers and sisters, we say, oh, you buy, you buy, you buy, you buy. And then we all in the same road. And then next time when I am there, I give talk, you all can attend. In one of the occasion. Or most of the friends, they say, hey, you buy there, I also want to buy there, so that I want to be near you. But then a question by some of the Buddhist friends, I thought you are a Buddhist. How come you go and buy this relicorium and columbarium? By right, you should cremate your body and then put into the sea. And then that's it. Return it back from ashes to ashes. Why do you have to keep a little bit? You don't keep the whole body, you know. When you go to the crematorium and you collect back the relics, you only collect a few pieces and a little bit of ash. You put into the small little urn and then you place it. That becomes what we call the relics. And like what the Buddha did. The Buddha had relics and then it was enshrined in stupas. In order to inspire, in order to, what you call, to give people a memory and to actually have what we call something for them to venerate and respect. So therefore, thinking back, he says that if we were to do that, then you don't even have an ancestor table, you don't even have a relicorium to go, you don't even have a tombstone for your generations to come to remember their departed relatives. So it's good to honor them because from them, it's us. We actually came from them. And they have provided for us actually, like our parents. They have actually worked hard, they have earned their good living, and they provide the means for us to be successful in our life. And therefore, out of an honor to them, we keep them in our memory. If worst come to the worst, at least their picture. But a picture sometimes becomes less commanding. Less commanding means you don't really go to a picture, gather everybody together to look at the picture. But if you have a picture in a relicorium, a columbarium, or a tombstone, and you make it an occasion during Qing Ming, then everyone will then take this trouble to come together and remember that day, to remember their ancestor. So it's ancestor worship. But worship not because to offer them things, but worship is to honor and respect, and at the same time remember what they did for you, and out of kan-en or gratitude. So these are practice of virtues. So if we look at this, then Qing Ming becomes very memorable. Qing Ming becomes very meaningful. And the way we do it also becomes very, what you call, needy, necessary, and helpful also to educate us in our deliverance, to free our mind from attachment, from what we call, from a lot of cravings. And thus, we say, death is inevitable. Eventually, when we pass away, we hope that our children will remember us, right? And not just forget about us. Right now, we also have generations of young people who don't even visit their parents. And they have come to this point that there is no occasion for them, not even on their memorial days, not even on their birthdays. Therefore, it becomes disconnected. And human beings are social animals. If we don't have a family, we are not a social animal. That's why we are against cloning. Next time in future, you may not need a father and a mother to be born. You just take a cell from someone, and then you do cloning, and eventually produce another being. And that being will now grow up. And because they don't have a father and mother, they don't have brother or sisters, and therefore, they live alone without a family. Imagine the psychological effect upon that person. And we, being social animal, we really need to have what we call the fabric of a family. And that protects us, because at the end of the day, when you are sick, when you're in trouble, when you are in need, who comes to you first? It's your family. Your family is your closest. And that's why we have reunions. And the best time to have reunion is actually on the Chinese New Year Eve, or on a occasion like Qing Ming, where we gather to honor our ancestors. And so Qing Ming is again very meaningful. So with that, I end here and I open up for questions and answers. So you have any things that you would like to ask? Any questions? Yes. It's the same thing as when we go to the columbarium or the cemetery. We don't pray with food that is being killed. You pray with fruits. Offer vegetarian, offer what you call flowers, offer incense. The idea is these are all symbolic. But at the end of the day, the moral is you go there to pay respect and remember them. Yeah, the thoughts is very important, because what happens in the mind is the one that is important. Because as Buddhists, we are training our mind. It's not training in physical form, but training more on the mind. Remember, during the Buddha's time, whenever you go and visit the Buddha and listen to the Dhamma, normally what would the people bring? The people will bring flowers. Because it is a tradition that when you go and visit someone, you always bring a bunch of flowers to beautify the place. So people will bring flowers. Why do you bring light or oil lamps? It's because when the Buddha give talks, sometimes he give it in a place which may not be so bright. But they all want to see the Buddha. And when they sit there, they want to enjoy relishing the face of the Buddha when he talks and get more inspiration. So they place oil lamp at his feet and around him so that they can see the Buddha as he delivers the talk. Then how about incense? Remember I mentioned incense is not the one that produces a lot of smoke. Chinese New Year, we get that a lot. At the end, your eyes also become teary, when you go inside. So the incense that we offer is the fragrant one. Now, fragrant incense is when the Buddha give a talk, and people who comes from the field, they will then gather. They will be sweaty, and some of them will have odors, and the place may be what you call not cleaned up properly. Therefore, there will be odors and smell. So normally when you want a person to visit your house, what do? You got to make sure your house is fragrant. So you have what we call glades. Psst, 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 and put on some, what do you call, fragrance, right? And that is what they do in the olden days. They burn sandalwood, they burn jasmine, they burn incense. And this incense will then become fragrant. And you see, even in the emperor's court, in the center of the court is a big urn where they put incense. And the whole court will then be fragrant. And when people enter, you get that smell of what you call fragrance. Then why water or medicinal drinks? Remember our puja? It's not water actually, it's medicinal drinks. But now we have actually doubled it up with water. When the Buddha give a talk, sometimes you like to offer water. Right? Second, you like to offer medicinal drinks. Now the weather in India can be very extreme. Sometimes very cold. So you got to take drinks that keeps your body warm. Sometimes very hot. You got to take drinks, medicinal drinks that keep your body cool. So when the Buddha is giving a talk, sometimes you want his voice not to be, after lengthy talk, no more voice. You hurt your throat. So you give certain medicinal drinks that give, like honey and all the, certain herbs that actually give a very nice soothing to the throat. So you offer medicinal drinks. So there are people who are bring a medicinal drinks, and the Buddha will drink the medicinal drinks and then eventually give a talk. So these are the few items that we offer during the Buddha's time. We continue this practice as if like the Buddha was there, and whenever we want to hear the Buddha's teachings or want to pay respect to the Buddha, we offer these 4 items. And therefore, remembering the practice of puja or worship whenever we make offerings. Same thing, when we offer to our ancestors, when we offer to our deities, we not only offer these 4 items, we then add up with fruits. Like for example, when you visit somebody, you bring a packet of fruits, and you offer fruits, you offer flowers, you offer sometimes certain food. But in this case, we try to practice killing. Therefore, we don't offer any meat. We then offer what you call vegetarian dishes. And that is perfectly all right. And that's what a lot of people now is practicing in the tomb area now. They don't bring xiuji, Last time they used to bring the whole pig to the cemetery, and then after that chop there, and then start eating there and have picnic there. Now, yes, they become more educated. They do less of this. So does that answer your question? Okay. Any other questions? Yes. Well, if the house is already dedicated for human existence, by right they shouldn't be there, right? So you like to energize all the corners. So you place lights, you place fountains, anything that can whip up the energies. So once the energy is in constant motion, then they will not be able to stay still in that place. Then they go there, cannot do this, might as well leave the place. Oh, we're not. We are just saying that, look, I'm already Yap 4 already. Yap 4 means I already signal that this place is actually for human existence. You have your place. And that's what the Buddha sometimes to a certain extent advise. That when you are in places where they reside, and if you want to, use that place, most importantly is you invite them and says, I am a human, I would like to occupy this place, may I seek your permission? Or may I seek your deliverance so that you can allow me to use this place for my purposes. And that's why sometimes when we go to the jungle, when we go to caves, and we always recite that. And especially if we go to jungle and then eventually we do our little business, PP or WV or whatever, then we say, please, please excuse me. Because some of them may be tree. They are staying on trees. They are called tree spirits. And that's why we don't disturb them. But before we do anything, we seek their permission. Second, of course, if you are really being disturbed by them, and that's why Metta Sutta was taught by the Buddha because of this. That the monks went into the jungle and then eventually was disturbed. So when they were disturbed, they were actually being asked to, come back. So when they came back and complained to the Buddha said, no, you go back again. And you recite this, Metta Sutta, on how to radiate loving kindness. And radiate loving kindness to them. May you be well and happy. May you be free from disease and harm. May you be strong and healthy. May you be free from harm. Same thing when we go to a hotel room, when we visit a hotel room. Eventually when we step in, we say, oh, I feel a little bit, because sometimes you can feel it because your body energy and the energy does not sync, yin and yang. So you then says, may all beings be well and happy. May all beings be well and happy. Sabbe satta bhavantu sukhitata. And true enough, that night you sleep very well. Because they hear it and they say, okay, you are here to stay. Okay, I'm not going to disturb you. So we do coexist at certain points in time. But most of the time, they are more afraid of you than you are more afraid of them. Because you create a lot of energies, disturbance, and they get disturbed. So they would rather go to some place where they are not being disturbed. So for beings like this, they actually requires your metta, right? Your metta. And number two, if you have merits, may all beings, rejoice in these merits of mine. When you say that, that means you are actually passing some rejoicing to them. And if they can be communicated, they also rejoice for that moment of time. Okay? So this is how we protect ourselves. Last question? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, when I say transference of merits in order to help others, you first must rejoice. So when your mind is rejoicing and feeling good about what you have done, is your mind negative? Is your mind disturbed? Is your mind now at peace? So therefore, with that kind of peaceful mind, with that kind of calm mind, rejoicing and be happy, then you then share these feelings, share these thoughts with any beings that you radiate upon. And therefore, there is a transference of merits. But when you are negative, you can never be rejoicing. Because your mind can only do one thing at one time. If you are unhappy, you cannot be happy. If you are happy, you cannot be unhappy. Okay? So, the power of the mind is such that if our mind is at peace, number one, we can solve our own problem. Number two, we can actually share this peaceful mind with others so that they can also solve their own problem and come up with their own answers. Because only peaceful mind can get answers. Desperate mind cannot get answers. You will blank out. So whenever we are in trouble, don't allow your mind to be sick. Don't you allow the mind to be negative. That's why the Buddha says, when your body is sick, don't allow the mind to be sick. Because mind is more important. And mind can change. Mind over matter, they call it. That means if your mind is at peace, your energy also can realign back itself. When your mind is happy, your diseases can actually go away. Because you are no longer in stress. We are sick or diseased is because stress. Creating a lot of blockages to your energy flow in the energy. And because they are blocked, they then accumulate an abnormal growth or create inflammation and thus create pain. And that's why we are uncomfortable and painful. And that's why we are in discomfort or in disease. So sickness is because of the energy within us. And the way the Buddhists treat sickness is that maintain a good mind. Have a peaceful mind, have a calm mind, positive all the time. And by virtue of that, sometimes you don't even need to take medicine. Your body can realign its. That's why sometimes when the cancer patient, no, when their mind is not desperate, when the mind is not fearful, they say, okay, 6 months, 6 months, let me enjoy these 6 months. Let me go for holiday. Let me enjoy every good things that I can enjoy. And true enough, that 6 months becomes 6 years. Mind over matter. Okay? So with that, thank you very much, and I hope to see you all again. Yeah. Okay, if they have taken rebirth, we do not know. Then whether you transfer merit or don't transfer merits, the necessity is not there. But they could remain in that existence, especially as petas. Because we always say that transfer of merit is always more to that transitory period where our, relatives are born in that. In some beliefs, they call it the suspension period, waiting for the next. So you are there temporary. But as Buddhists, we say, you already taken rebirth, one birth already. And your birth span, lifespan is only 7 days. So within that 7 days, you are due for rebirth. Therefore, that Kong Te will then help you elevate to a happier rebirth if the opportunity comes. But if they actually be reborn as a human being, sorry, every marriage you send out, return to sender. Because tak boleh terima. That's why sometimes we say, what if they are born as human being or as an animal? Then if you know where they stay, then just go and tell them, hey, I do marriage for you. It's the same thing that some people tell me, hey, my mother is in Penang. Can I transfer marriage to her? I say, very simple. All of you do just take the telephone and call her. And say, Mom, I did this it's for in your name. And may you rejoice and be happy. The mom said, oh, thank you very much, thank you very much. She also feel happy that something is done in her name. And she feel good to being part of it. So as long as the conveying of the message is passed on, then transfer is done. So transfer doesn't mean by send by what you call courier. Transfer means the message is received. Okay? I have not much time, but I will hope to come back again. Then I will see you all again to talk on other subjects. So thank you very much, and may you all be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you very much, Datuk Charlie Chia. So, while we don't have a physical token of appreciation today, we'll actually be sending you a Grab gifts voucher after this. Yeah, thank you so much.
I just want to do a bit of transference of merits, just a short one. Okay, brothers and sisters, let us remain calm. Breathe easily, breathe in, breathe out. Maintain your calmness, maintain your peacefulness. Feel at ease. Remember this occasion where we are able to gather in this auspicious hall and be able to participate in learning and the giving of the Dhamma. This is actually a very meritorious action. Let us rejoice in this moment, and by virtue of these merits that we have accrued, may we all be well and happy. May we all be free from disease and harm. May we all be strong and healthy. And by virtue of these merits, may we wish our parents, our brothers and sisters, our relatives and friends, may they all be well and happy. May they all be free from disease and harm. May they all be strong and healthy. And by these merits accrued, let us recall our departed relatives. Wherever they may be born, let us visualize them, see them in our minds. May they be well and happy. May they rejoice in these merits. May they be free from dukkha and suffering. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you.
Our next Dhamma talk that is organized by the youth section will be by Datuk Seri Dr. Victor Wee. The topic is Wisdom Through Buddhist Music. It will be held on Sunday, 23rd April at 10:30 a.m. physically, in person, and also online. We hope that everyone will be able to make it for the next Dhamma talk. And for those of you who are watching online, please be aware that our Pets Memorial service will be delayed by a bit because our Dhamma talk has finished a bit later.